good afternoon, or good morning still. This is Frances Cath-Benedice, President of the Houston East End Chamber of Commerce, and it's an honor to welcome you to our Friday, May 1st business webinar during COVID-19. And as a lot of you know, the governor of Texas has reopened some of the businesses here in Texas slowly. I personally can't wait for the nail salons and the barber shops and the hair salons to open up so we can all support them. But in the meantime, we wanted to have two guests here today to talk to you about having your business ready to reopen. Some of you are going to wait for a while, but in the meantime, we want to make sure that you have the right tools that you need in order to open safely and strategically. We're going to show you a little image of our agenda that we have coming up next. But before we do, we wanted to also remind everyone that this audio will be on our website. So if there is a business owner that you know that would like to hear this information, please make sure that you share that with them. We also have created an East End Strong Facebook group page that you can go to. And again, if you're a small business owner, join the group and promote your business, and so that we can make sure everyone else knows that you're open and how we can support you. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Caveh Masum, who is the principal at Collaborate LLC, an architectural firm here in the East End. We're very honored to have you present to us today. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you so that you can get started.
Thank you so much for having us. We're happy to be here presenting and looking forward to getting everything open again. I'm Caveh Masum with Collaborate Architects. We are a full-service architectural firm in the East End as well. And we're going to talk, we're going to scroll through some images. They'll be going in the background, but we'd like to discuss how we think some good approaches might be to reopening our office spaces and potential changes to, I'm sure everyone's heard the term, the new normal that we'll be getting back to. And even from then, the different stages of that, how do we get back? How do we approach it? How do we implement? And then from there, there will probably be adjustments that we learn from as we go through the process of reopening. So some of the things I think I've come across in the research that I've been reading is with the office spaces, how they might change. We looked at ideas between will they become more open? Will they become more closed? How do we plan for opening in a scaled way? Do we leave some people at home to work remote for now? I'm sure that'll all be dependent on the function of each individual's business or how we approach the function of the nature of the business, the size of the business, and things like that will be factors. But some of the conclusions we came to are that office spaces will actually become more open, possibly larger, more flexible. As you can see in some of these pictures here, you don't really see a lot of bolted down permanent furniture pieces. They're very flexible. The spaces are very open so that you can change and adjust on the fly, which is what we will have to do, I think, when we get back to our offices. We'll have to rearrange our furniture. We'll have to look at how we interact with each other. Of course, we obviously have to have meetings together and we'll be face to face, and that, I don't think any of that will change. I just think how we go about it will change quite a bit, and a lot of in the spirit of self-governing, which is, I think, what, if I'm understanding the governor's intention is, it'll be up to, some of the business leaders to create this new culture between how we interact with each other. I think you'll see in some of these upcoming slides pictures of people not necessarily really facing each other, but they're in the same room. So maintaining the 6 feet apart from each other, maybe during times where it's not during meetings, times of work where you're producing deliverables or having to be in front of your computer. And then you'll have other opportunities where you come together like normal for conferences and And that will just probably happen as it normally would, I would think, whenever you open up your offices. It's really just about, as I'm understanding some of the new research coming out from a lot of the leading architectural firms, it's about reducing contact as much as possible. So one of the best examples I've found that everyone can go look at is it's the Krause building in Des Moines, Iowa. They designed the building for 200 square foot per occupant, which is generally double the amount of square footage you require per the code. So they took it upon themselves to design for 800 occupants a 160,000 square foot office building. And the way that they market this building is that each occupant has a 160,000 square foot office building at their disposal. It is one of the most open floor plans. There are no real cubicles. People can come in and use the 5-story building as they see fit. I really think that's a really good example of the potential approach for how to effectively get people back into the office and in front of each other, but at the same time, allowing the flexibility with all of our new knowledge and understanding of COVID that I'm sure everyone's aware of. So they'll have their own kind of approach to how they can go about their workday safely. And they can plan around all that because there's maximum flexibility inside of this building. I think that's a good one for people to look at. It's a very good case study, I would say, if that's what we want to call a case study. It's an example. That's probably a better word for people to look at. It's how I think things will go. Other factors will be new technologies. I've actually read something that I couldn't believe myself, but I'm just reading about new nanotechnologies that you can apply to surfaces. And you basically just spray this nanotechnology on like Windex, and it apparently kills viruses on contact. These are amazing innovations that I'm reading about that I think you could apply to your office space, and it wouldn't change your office space in any way, really. It's just applying this coating to your surfaces, and viruses can't live on them. And as I understand it, that would drastically reduce the dangers of transmission for viruses. Other technologies could be infrared technology, where if someone is monitored to have a high fever or high body temperature, discreetly approach them and just say, look, there's a high body temperature on you, maybe go get a test. Once we get increased testing, we can see the ability for antibodies and potential viruses that people may have. Of course, there are technologies for door opening. We all know about those, but the two that I have read that I think would be really good are the nanotechnologies and being able to see if people have high body temperatures. There are many other we could talk about, but those are the two that stuck out to me the most. This picture is great. You can see it's as flexible as you can get in many ways. There's a public space for people to go around, and you can sit on the steps. You can sit next to the window in those chairs. And if you need to call a meeting, you can step into to that enclosure there and have a meeting. I think this is definitely the way, a good image to see the future of office buildings. I think they'll become more open, less closed off. There's been a good debate in the architectural community of closed versus open and which one's best. And a lot of different debates have good points of having a closed office space and an open office space. But I think that was before COVID. And if we want to mitigate having such an economic shutdown, we might start looking at becoming more open from the research that I've read. And I think we're going to start exploring some of our office designs with our clients starting off on this foot.
One of the questions, if I may, Caveh, and thank you so much for sharing that information. But one of the questions we have is what has been towards close collaborative workspaces? Do you think there will be a return to the traditional office with a closed door? I know you mentioned that, but do you think that there will be?
I'm not sure that that'll happen as much. I believe that, you know, if there needs to be anything that is closed door, it could still be in the function of, you know, a conference room. If that needs to happen, or, you know, with as much as we're doing right now. If we have to do it virtually with a Zoom meeting, if people are still working remote, I think we will have the option to have those closed door conversations without necessarily having a row of closed door offices.
And so for those of you who don't know, you guys, your offices are in the headquarters shared space. And the next question is, how do you see the collaborative shared workspace companies like WeWork being impacted?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that depending on most of the collaborative work spaces, you know, they all have their own, despite being open collaborative workspaces, they still have their own, I guess, methods of how they sell their spaces. Like our space, they pride themselves on their floor plan being 40% public space. And that means of all the tenants we have, I think there's 20 or 30 tenants in our building, it's still shared for everyone. I don't think WeWork or Regis in particular, I know Regis has a more traditional closed door office, at least in the ones that I've been, the few that I've been in. And I believe that the closed office space, just from what I think, if we're looking at this recent event of COVID, I think diminishes the effectiveness of how we go back to work.
Thank you for that. And we've got another good question here is, what would you recommend to small, medium-sized businesses with a finite space amount? How can they restructure for safety?
I guess the best way would be, how do you redo the space? If it's a smaller space, if I had to guess, it's not as compartmentalized. There aren't as many offices. Then, you know, how do you all occupy the smaller space safely? So as I would see it initially, without knowing all the details, you know, you're looking at potentially rearranging furniture, looking at new furniture possibly, and seeing what new interactions you can create that way.
Great. And then another question we have here is boardroom changes. Traditionally, boardroom setups are very close settings. Has there been any discussion of the new boardroom meeting type of setup?
Now that's the stumper. I've tried to dive into that because, you know, when you have those discussions or those functions, you know, it's always been traditional. Now, the only good answer I can come up with there is that the room becomes virtual, where you can do it from anywhere. That's the only response I have as far as a technological response. But I'm having I have to look at the actual space design. If there's going to be a change in the space design of the boardroom, wish I had an answer to that.
No, that's a good one. And then as far as converting, you know, furniture with plexiglass and see-through barriers, is that something that you're seeing on the rise right now?
I haven't seen that as a suggestion so much. I've really only seen those in retail settings, but I don't see how it couldn't work. It could be very effective. I just wonder what the psychological impact to that is. That I've actually read a very little bit on. It's the psychological impact of a physical barrier. And even though it's plexiglass, it's still there. And I think you still notice it. And I'm not sure how that impact may change interactions between people, especially in a boardroom setting.
Great. And then we've got one last question here. It's, as your team prepares to return to work, what safety measures are y'all planning to put in place right now?
Some of the things we've discussed are potentially looking at a scaled phase back into the office. We're working with our landlord as well to see how they want us to go about it. But our office is we have a nice setup in our building where we have multiple points of entry. And I think that's going to help our cause because we are in a co-sharing workspace. So just being able to come in multiple points and diminish how much traffic we put into one place is good. But specifically for our company, looking at a scaled approach, like can some people stay home for now? Can maybe just the leadership team go in and work there where everyone else can stay home for now, and maybe that's one route to go for us. That's the first approach that I think we're going to take.
And there's just one more quick question because it kind of ties into that for those businesses who have the luxury of doing that, but for retail, who sometimes they can't have that luxury, what would be your recommendation for brick and mortar for safety for planned use?
What I have seen, and it has been effective, was before they shut down the retail, and I'm sure, I think this will go into Seth's points with signage, is you allow people to come in, you hold them outside, and then you allow them to come in, you choose the number that you believe is safe, and you just limit the quantity of people that come in so people wait outside in a queue.
Good. Well, we're going to bring you back at the very end and ask both of you guys some questions. But Caveh, if anyone wanted to get a hold of you, can you just read your email address and company phone number or website?
Absolutely, yeah. Our website is www.collaborate-llc.com. And my email is cmasum, my first initial and last name, at collaborate-llc.com. And our phone numbers can be found there on the website. And my personal cell for anyone, which is also my work phone direct line, is 713-550-4624.
Great. Thank you so much, Caveh. So we will we're going to introduce you to our next speaker, Seth Stokes with Launch Graphics. He is the owner of this company, and they are doing a lot of work with businesses to have safe signage out there and also help with logistics. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Seth to introduce himself and talk about his company.
Good morning. Like I said, my name is Seth Stokes. I started Launch Graphics here in Houston 7 or 8 years ago or so, whatever that is by now. I spent years and years in the corporate world and decided it was time to do the small business thing and just be in control of the destiny instead. So, but I appreciate the opportunity here. Launch is a full service shop. We do everything from menus to pocket folders to vehicles to interior signage for buildings and so on. With the virus outbreak and so on that has happened, a lot of what we do has become more and more safety signage, especially with how it crept up on it pretty quickly. You know, a lot of stores have put down masking tape on the floor to try to guide people what to do. But some of that's actually starting to look not as desirable. You know, it was a quick fix. But what we're going to have to do long term is kind of work this into the customer experience of our businesses so it becomes seamless with who we are and it becomes a natural, normal thing for people to see. You know, one of the things that like you mentioned, some of the businesses don't have abilities to split off what they, where they can build out and so on. But guiding people into the new requirements and what they need to be doing until it becomes natural is kind of necessary, so to speak. There's a lot of places out there that are doing safety signage online and super cheap here and there. One of the big things that I think that we, especially us as smaller businesses, need to keep in mind is the safety section of that, especially with floor graphics. If you pick up a graphic online, does it become a slip hazard? Does it become a trip hazard? Things like that, where a lot of the ones that we end up doing have a slip resistant laminate put on them. It's a UL tested, so on, for safety. So that's covering us as a business as well as doing just, signage. So there's always something cheaper out there, but we're trying to do it and protect ourselves as business goes forward. So there's those, a lot of the signages on windows, just in general, there's just going to have to be a whole lot of guidance into what is going to be our new normal, for at least the foreseeable future. So one of the other things that has become, we do a lot of vehicle graphics. One of the bigger markets I think that's coming out of this is people delivering. HEB, Amazon and all that already was delivering anyway, but grocery stores delivering, we're starting to do that, but it really went, overboard in a very short amount of time where people wanted this delivered. Smaller businesses, they can either, rely on the Ubers of the world to do that, or, they may want to invest in getting their own. And that's where some of what we do comes into play as well. If you're going to deliver your product and your services, at least looking, professional when you do that, in different levels of vehicle graphics and so on. Some of the other things like the restaurants and other small businesses of how do we sanitize, menus and things that other people come in and touch. Do we go back to disposable menus? That once they have it, it never comes back. Then the likelihood of somebody picking it up and putting it down and hoping that an employee sanitized it correctly and so on. Digital print these days has come down in price tremendously. Disposable menus, at least for a short time, may be a better route. There's a lot of things that are going to happen or are happening that may not be super long term, but they're going to be necessary for now. All in all, what we do really hasn't changed a lot. It's just kind of refocused a little bit. Our world has always been about information and how to get people around and guiding them through a building and so on. So it really hasn't changed a whole lot. That's
great. Now, I know that it's important to have an open sign out there, and there are, when you're trying to drive by and there's not a lot of cars in the parking lot, how do you have recommendations for outdoor signage, or is that important?
We do a lot of, the window signage. It's on the glass and even on the concrete. There's graphics that can be put on the sidewalk or on the concrete out in front of your business and so on. The large, pole signage, monument signage, I don't think those are going to change really at all. Those have been effective for, decades or longer, and those will probably remain the same. But there'll be a lot more informational signage on doors, as in, only 20 people at a time, or, wait here, or things like that. Or even the curbside service, even having the promotional pop-up tents, the 10 by 10 tents that we use for events and so on. Those may have to be outside your business to shade people that, are waiting to get in, so to speak. So.
Mm-hmm. And so it sounds like you can really do it all. Are there any type of signage that you cannot do?
Yeah, but this is, I think it's 28 years now for me in the printing world. So if we don't handle it inside, I've got a good friend that, I'm sure that can handle it, whatever it is that you're looking for. So, we'll make sure you get handled either way.
And another question for you, Seth, is what is the average time for order and delivery?
We've got some things that we're working to try to present to help the East End Chamber and businesses like that. A couple days really is not unheard of. Some of our stock things that we already have files made for and all that don't have customer logos and all that put in. I mean, we could be a day or two, or sooner, depending on how badly things are needed.
Great. And another good question here is, we know that signage has been high on demand for retail. Is there any recommendations for office setting signage?
I think the office is just as in high demand as retail has been, but retail throughout this, I've been, because we do signage for hospitals and things like that, we've been considered the essentials. So we've been, or at least I've been going out to, Lowe's and businesses and things like that. I think the retail is seen a little sooner because they didn't close. With the offices being closed, there's going to be a big surge of retail. What do I need on my retail door? What do we need for the restroom? What do we need, for all of those kind of things? So I think there's, it's coming down to what restrictions are in your office. Do you need one person in the kitchen at a time? Is it one person in the restroom at a time? And how do you portray that? Do you just stick an 8.5 by 11 and tape it to the door, from your printer at the office? Do you try to make something that's, a little bit more professional looking or whatever? And is that a developer side or is it a company side? So, there's a lot of those questions that still need to be answered.
Good. I believe that. And then another good question here is, what has been the hardest impact of COVID for your organization, and how did you manage to go through it? Seth, I'll start with you.
The hardest impact right now is the loss of business. When you can't make sales calls, when nobody's in their office, you just can't knock on their door and so on. The fear, the loss of revenue that's happened from businesses being shut down. A lot of projects got put on hold, which put us on hold. So we're, as the print and signage side, we're pretty far down in the food chain. So even when some of these retailers and some open, we may get some smaller orders here and there, but a lot of those big ones that we do, a lot of the companies right now are trying to recover the losses that they've had in the past month or two before they even think about coming back in to do, the bigger projects and so on that we had been waiting on or working on up to that. And we maneuver through it just by looking for different opportunities. There's, where one door closes, another one opens. So, we just got to keep looking for it.
Good answer. And Caveh, how's your organization hit the hardest?
I personally, from what I've seen, are client interactions. We've had to adjust how we interact with them and still keep their projects moving along. But really, it was just a minor speed bump. We found ways to connect using technologies, which I think has saved us. The technologies offered to us on how to keep our workflow and client contact has helped us. But at first it was a challenge. That was the biggest thing we'd faced at the beginning. Of course, Seth nailed the point that I think we're all feeling is, this slowdown that happens, trickles down to the businesses. The clients, they pump the brakes a little bit and they hold off and they see how the dust wants to settle before moving forward on some projects, which is understandable, but that has been the challenge. So I think it's webinars like this though, where you start looking at the issue and how to mitigate the next economic slowdown through design and graphics like we're doing today. So hopefully we can figure out how to keep it from being so slow next time.
Good point. And then, one of the reasons why we brought both of you on together, because it kind of ties into businesses that are opening. If a company needs assistance on planning and logistics, they can call Collaborate, and then your plans will probably include signage and things of that nature that Seth's company can do. Are there any other categories or businesses that people should take into consideration in addition to planning, signage?
I think that you can, I feel like how it all incorporates will be interesting. Does it become a lead issue? For instance, LEED, which is environmental and green design. Does it integrate into that? But it will have to be addressed by someone. And again, Seth made the right point. Is it the owner, the developer? Who is it? But yes, it will have to be addressed, and it will have to come in somehow. How that happens is I think going to be figured out as we go through this.
Well, and that's, just like with a lot of the other things that we end up doing, it becomes an educational issue. A lot of retails that are trying to open now still don't even know what they need to do. Even on the government level, the mandates or the orders from the governor are still being interpreted.
Yeah.
So they look to people like Collaborate and us of, okay, what do we need to do? So, it's tough for us to stay on top of everything because they look at us, to help them, through it as well. So, because a lot of it's very, very confusing, and we're supposed to be the experts, as much as we can.
That's 100% correct. I think how I'm interpreting things from the state level is we are to figure this out. They don't want to intervene, and in many ways I can agree to that. We are the experts. We're the architects. We're the ones doing the graphics, or Seth is, and we come together to create a plan. And based on what I think I've discovered is, we become more open, and I think with that, since imagine being in a completely open, massive floor plan. In many ways, the only way to navigate that is with graphics, because now you don't have enclosed spaces with your name on the door. You have an entire 5-story building, for instance, in that one example I gave in Iowa, where it's yours to use, but you still have to delineate some function to these places. And then allow people to figure out how to maximize what they need to do, what their tasks are within this big space.
And then thank you for that's very true. And the next wave of locations to open is coming, sooner than we think. And then people will be out on the cars, and masks will be just the near normal from here on out. Any other advice that you would like to give your fellow business owners? Because everyone is struggling today, and some of the tips that you've done to keep your employees with you, to keep your morale high and productive teams.
Well, we made the decision, very tough decision, to not let anybody go. So we have cleaned underneath every table. We have painted every door jamb, in the entire office, just to keep something moving there for a little while. Things are picking back up, but, use this slow time as a business owner in general. Use this slow time to figure out where we're going. What do we need to do? We can all sit and look at financials and worry about this and worry about that, but now's the time to be strategic. What moves do you need to make today while everybody else is freaking out, so that you can be on top? As soon as the doors open, we're ready to go again. It's, I don't want to say it's that easy, but it's kind of that easy.
Yeah, flexibility. It's something that we should be embracing. To bend with the wind, I guess, is a friend of mine put it. I like that saying, because we don't know a lot of things right now. So really, just overly communicating the facts to our employees and customers that they can contact us anytime if they have any concerns, any questions, whether on a business front or an employee front. please let us know what they are and how we can help. Because if we know what the concerns are, it'll make it much easier for us to address how to go about doing it. So overly communicating to them to overly communicate to us, I guess, is kind of the way I'd like to approach it, with our company, so that we can. It's information. We need information, and people have it. So.
Well, and we're business owners too.
Right.
We're here to help.
Right.
That's what we do.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. And then I know that today, again, is May 1st, and a lot of the retail and restaurants are back open. What do you foresee, any kind of challenges that are going to happen that you just heard about, that people just need to know about before they just go out there and start shopping and what have you?
It makes me wonder. It's going to be interesting for me to see how many people are going to rush right out, because there's still a fear. There's some people that are afraid, that don't think this should be opening, and that's fine. That's their prerogative to think that. But it makes me wonder, how big of a rush will this be? There's some people that are 8 o'clock this morning, they were standing out waiting to get into the mall, kind of thing, because they've got to do something. So it's an interesting time to figure out what's going to happen. So we just have to be prepared, like I said, bend with the wind, and we'll figure it out together, and we'll keep moving. So this is not the last or the first time that life has thrown some weird things at us, and we adapt and move on.
Yeah, it's safe to say many people will choose to just stay home. I think that's going to happen. I at least from the people I know and have spoken with, they will stay home. They will choose to just wait it out, I guess, a little longer, which is fine. Everyone has that option. Really, at this point, if the more information we can get, the better. Hopefully, we can get more information on testing for antibodies. That'll tell us so much, and I think that's happening. So. I think at this point, it's safe to say the information's coming in, and it's time to just figure out the solution at this point. We've had time to think about it, see what's been going on, and I also serve on I serve on the AIA Urban Design Committee, and they make a lot of good points about the differences between dense urban areas and places like Houston. Like, we use the analogy of New York versus Houston. In many ways, we have an advantage here, because even living in the most dense part of Houston, you can still go to Costco and get a bulk amount of items and come home and be by yourself for 2 or 3 weeks. And I think that's why we've been fortunate to not have some of the spikes that maybe places in New York, where you have to walk out of your door. You can only carry a couple bags in your hand at a time. You have to do that multiple times a week. You've increased your, potential to, contact people who might have the virus just by virtue of our shopping habits. So Houston has to look at itself and its inherent qualities whenever we approach this. So it's what information you look at, how you look at it, how you interpret it and approach it. Because if you go to a broad spectrum approach, there might be some nuance that may not apply. So that would be the piece of advice, for anyone who might be seeing this now or in the future, is look at the local condition and how it works, and apply that to how to be as safe as possible.
Great. And so I hope that after today that our members and everyone here will get in contact with you guys and don't have the fear of expense or cost, because it truly is an investment. It's an investment to correct things that are that can be corrected, and just to make sure that you're safe and strategic in welcoming your customers back, so that they don't have a bad experience and not come back before. So with that, any closing remarks? Seth, we'll start with you.
No, I think in closing, I mean, we will survive this. I mean, we will move on, and then 2 years from now, we won't even barely remember, what happened. It's just a matter of staying calm and getting through it. We'll be fine, one way or another.
Agreed. I agree with those sentiments 100%. We're here to help. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of this. We hope that we hope what we've uncovered happens to be implemented and work. Again, I looked at it from a three-phased approach: gather information, implement it, and then adjust, because that's also going to have to happen. But hopefully, with the information that we have, we can do this effectively. And I appreciate, the way that Texas might be going about it currently, because they allow the experts to come up with the plan.
And so I look forward to, again, when the barbershops, hair salons, and nail salons are open. But just want to remind everyone again, when you're out there shopping, please do that with patience, respect, and kindness, because everyone is doing this near normal and we can get through it together. But that patience, respect, and kindness is going to help us go a long, long way. Again, make sure that you visit our website, eecoc.org, for a list of other companies that can help you through this recovery effort. And we look forward to connecting with you next Friday. Thanks, and have a great weekend. Goodbye.